So there's one way of understanding spirit, divinity, as the sacred essence of everything, the ground of everything, the timeless, changeless, unmanifest ground that is also the ground and essence of all manifestation, but by its nature is unmanifest. And when we awaken to what I've been calling our true nature, or our natural state, or awakened awareness, we are awakening to this dimension of spirit, or the sacred, or the divine, or our own nature. There is another face of spirit, or sacred, or divinity, another dimension of it, that is really of a totally different order than that. And it is the active face of that. It's the impulse of evolution. It's spirit as the evolutionary impulse itself, the creative principle, the driving force in the cosmos and in consciousness. It's the power, it's the active, dynamic power that moves the cosmos forward. Like, we know now, scientifically, it's still a pretty recent discovery, but we know we're in an evolving universe. They used to think the universe was static, and they realized, whoa, there was a big bang. And then all these phases and cycles the universe has gone through cosmically. And then life was born, and then life went through all these stages of evolution, leading to, kind of the most remarkable stage being human evolution. Also the most precarious because we have so much power because of our intelligence. But, the cosmos evolved, life evolved, and in human beings, consciousness evolved. We went from being, fairly kind of primitive, simple animals to having this extraordinary complex consciousness that's been able to create the world that we live in, and is able to communicate about things like this, and is able to know itself, and even know, and even discover divinity and spirit and consciousness and enlightenment. And all of this from just stardust. So we are this, the universe is not in a process of evolution. The universe is a process of evolution. There is an evolutionary impulse running through the whole thing. And when we discover that evolutionary impulse is actually who and what we are, that we aren't just an individual body, mind, organism, that there is a dimension of who we are that is the living, incarnated impulse of evolution itself that has given birth and to the whole cosmos and everything in it. And that is also in one way we are the ground and the essence, and in another way we are the impulse and the power and the creative force itself. And it's possible through spiritual practice of a very different kind, not necessarily through meditation. I mean, some of us will touch into this in meditation. It can happen, does happen, especially when you start to activate this part, then it sometimes shows up in your meditation and really disrupts your meditation because it's not very meditative. You might hear that in my voice. This is an evolutionary imperative. And when we awaken to it, we feel in every cell of our being compelled to align with that impulse, to manifest it, to participate in the further evolution of life and consciousness, and even the evolution of God, even the evolution of divinity, of the sacred principle of spirit. Because that, we realize, isn't just static either. Even though it has a static, timeless, changeless dimension, spirit itself is going through evolution just like everything else in the cosmos. And we can participate in its further development. We can participate in uplifting the world into ever higher orders of goodness, truth, and beauty, and complexity. And that in a sense, the purpose of our life, really, the purpose of human life when we discover who and what we are as the evolutionary principle, we start to see that we can make an enormous difference. Even one person can have a huge impact because this is a free and open system. It's not a closed system, it's an evolving process. And everything is dynamic and it's all moving forward. And when we become conscious of it and we incarnate and awaken as the creative principle or the evolutionary impulse, we become like an agent of evolution and an agent of divinity in the world. And our choices are powerful. And we can make a big difference, in whatever ways, in whatever context we find ourselves. It's not that we're going to all become sort of activists necessarily. I mean, some might, be just in their relationships or even on their own in their practice, whatever. But the point is, now all of everything we're doing in our life takes on a new and profound significance. And miraculously in this, and the reason I'm saying this is a completely different domain of awakening practice, is that this dynamic dimension of the sacred, of divinity, and of us also ends up being a very powerful self-transcending process, because our petty little concerns don't seem very important when we awaken to the enormous significance of our life as participants in evolution and as an expression of the evolutionary impulse, the incredible wisdom, power, strength, courage, love that is coursing through our veins makes so many things that once seemed burdensome and difficult and, like a struggle, it makes them seem pretty inconsequential. And we just find we are up for so much more in life than we ever thought, because now something much bigger than us has stepped into the driver's seat. And, it's not that you're not you, it's just that you're you with a capital Y-O-U. and it really realigns everything. So how do we work with this in a practice context? There is a dimension of spiritual practice that has to do with, maybe initially in a contemplative sense, waking up to this evolutionary impulse. And I'll just guide us for a few minutes in that, just to have a taste of that. But then there is the practice becomes, once I've discovered and begun to realize that I am the evolutionary impulse, that is my own nature. I'm not who I thought I was, this little mere mortal being. I am now a superconscious evolutionary being. That's who I now know myself to be. I've discovered it experientially. The practice then becomes, how do I align my life with that? Because this is what I call it, the evolutionary self. It's the human face of the evolutionary impulse. We discover the evolutionary self within us, and we realize that the evolutionary self has different values, priorities, concerns, cares, and perspectives. It sees things very differently than my conventional self. So what are the practices I can begin to do to align my life with this evolutionary self I've discovered myself to be, to bring that into manifestation and expression? And again, this is obviously something that we can, derive dozens, if not hundreds, of distinct practices from. And obviously I've done much of that work in past years in other contexts. But for our purposes here, what's important is to get the essence of it, because then you can work with it in the way I just described. You can make that into a practice in the way I just described. That's the essence of the practice. I'm just going to guide us in a brief contemplation. So this is not a meditation. It's a reflection or a contemplation. I want to invite you now to just close your eyes. And allow yourself to bring your attention to the part of you that is the energy of the Big Bang still rippling through the universe. Bring your attention to the part of you that is the dynamic, creative principle and force moving through the cosmos. It's the life force, the evolutionary force moving through life, bringing life to ever higher, ever more complex, ever more diverse and beautiful expressions. Just take a moment to imagine, to just see all the beauty and biological diversity in this world, all the colorful birds and fishes and flowers, all the diversity of animal life and plant life, and all the extraordinary diversity that human life has brought into existence through technology and innovation, and just this whole world, really an explosion of creativity, of cosmic creativity. And just bring your attention to the part of yourself that is that explosion of creativity, that is that explosion in motion, of evolution, of spirit in action, of consciousness expanding and moving forward, upward, onward. Become aware of how this energy, this intelligence, this passion already lives in you, expresses itself in your life. Feel the part of you that gets thrilled by change, that's excited by change and newness and novelty. There's a part of us that even gets excited when things don't go according to plan, when they fall apart. Because for a moment, nobody knows what's going to happen. We're in the unknown. We're off the map on a new frontier we didn't expect. Notice this impulse to create, this impulse to evolve, this impulse to awaken. And just notice what it feels like to step fully into that right now. To just acknowledge that this is your own nature, that you are that impulse of evolution. okay. Just allow that to continue to ripple forward in whatever way it does. The work of awakening to and aligning with the evolutionary impulse is itself a very comprehensive and life-changing spiritual practice that is not something we do sitting down with our eyes closed by ourselves. It's something that we do when engaged in life, and it propels our engagement with life in a whole new way. And to begin to practice it, again, the simple gateway I'm giving you is to begin to experience that, to notice that in your life. Notice that evolutionary impulse. Begin to awaken to it, activate it, and align with it, and explore what it's like to live your life from that different center.